All right, test, test, test. I hope this is working. Test, test, test. It's working? All right, well, I think this live stream should be working now. We had a few technical issues, so we've missed the first 10 lots or so. But yeah, we're super excited to have this stream going on live. I hope that everyone can hear me. For whatever reason, the previous stream we had set up wouldn't connect to the YouTube, but this should be working now. But if anyone is listening could send a quick message, that would be appreciated. But yeah, we're going to be going over L5 Auction 1 as it unfolds live. We've got well over 300 different lots here that are going to be auctioned today. And of course, being on L5, these are going to be coins sold by a variety of different collectors from different backgrounds. Yeah, making sure we're getting coins from collectors to collectors, and we're very excited to see how it goes. We're already seeing some strong bidding overall, which is nice. A huge perk of the site, of course, is that there's no seller's fees and low buyer's premium, so people have more money to spend on coins anyway. But we're seeing decently strong action. And as we can see here already on this lot, we have some anti-snipe bidding protections built in. So if you were to bid on a coin at the last seconds, there's an automatic time extension. That way, no one's kind of sniping a lot at the very last second and taking it away, but the coin will hammer for whatever the market approximation of value is. So we can actually see that going on here with the high bidder also. And it looks like this lot will close at 105, which is a fair price. But yeah, we're super excited to see how the auction goes. We've got a lot of amazing coins. This one, of course, has some wonderful provenance too. A very nice history and a even better coin, so to speak. Wonderful strike, wonderful style, and wonderful preservation. Perfect. Thank you, Chris. I do very much appreciate the fact that you said that. Hello. I hope everyone is doing well. Yeah, I've not actually done a live stream in a very long time, so I'm glad to be back live. It's always fun. I think the very last time we did this was actually the NAC Cope sale about a year ago. We were live, and that was a lot of fun. But of course, today we're coming at it from a very different perspective in that we're actually I'm a part of the team now at L5, which is very exciting, and we're very happy to bring this sale to you all. A lot of really great coins, wonderful provenance. As we can see here, this one goes back pretty far, if I recall. Let's see here for the provenance. Yeah, so we have a 1966 provenance to Schulman in the Netherlands. So this one is actually a very nice coin with a solid history. Yeah, so we can kind of see now how the L5 site is going to work. Sort of in the mold of bidder, we also have a live auction feature. So anyone who's also following at home, you can see up here under the L5 auction 1 banner, there is a tick mark to follow the auction live. So if you click that, your browser will stay on the current auction, the current coin being sold. But yeah, I'm going to have the chat pulled up here too, so if anyone has any questions or whatnot, definitely feel free to shoot those my way, and I'll answer those as they come along. But yeah, it's going to be a very exciting sale. I'm not sure if everyone saw, but we had the top 10 list posted a while back. That was both in email and also on the Discord. And from that, we highlighted some of the better coins in the auction, some of the really special pieces, and we got some good feedback, good engagement there. So I'll be excited to see how those actually go, how they're going to sell. But yeah, we can see here we're going into some very nice Greek coins. Of course, a very rare issue. Nice toning, a little bit crystallized, but a very nice piece. And we can see here then again, just sort of a demonstration of how the L5 bidding site is going to work. Very simple, very easy. If you've used Bidder before, it's going to be very similar. So again, you're going to have your account set up, and then, yeah, very simple. You can see here there's a quick bid button for when you're signed in. You can click on that. And then, as mentioned, pretty important, there is going to be no sniping. So we kind of chose to factor that in to make sure that we have sort of a fair marketplace. We know for ancient coins there are some older users who maybe aren't as tech savvy that get kind of frustrated with sniping and bidding like that. So any bid placed within the last few seconds will automatically add a couple seconds on to make sure that you can adjust accordingly. I see a comment on here asking if I'm going to be bidding. Yeah, I do have a few targets later on in the auction that I'm looking at. There were some really nice Roman pieces that I saw. There was one Megalba that looked pretty interesting, but we'll see. It depends on the prices. I think the lots so far seem pretty strong in terms of bidding, which is obviously a very good sign for us, of course. Very happy about that. But at the same time, maybe that means I'm not going to be bidding on certain lots just because. But yeah, I know this will be kind of interesting for some of the viewers, I'm sure. We've actually caught a few shill bidders on L5, and so of course that's a big thing that we're proponents of, to eliminate that. We don't want shill bidding going on, people having to pay unnecessary prices. So we've actually already had 3 accounts so far that we've detected for shill bidding that we then removed from the platform. And of course that's a big perk as a buyer. You're not going to have a seller bidding up their own coins, and that's kind of a natural part of the hobby, not very good, but you're going to see that a lot across various auction houses and platforms where you have sellers making accounts and bidding up their own lots. But that's something that L5 sort of distinguishes itself on, in that we don't want to have that kind of behavior. We want to have customer protection. So by using IP tracking and various things, we can actually flag if you have more than one accounts and if you're using that to shill bid. So we've already caught some accounts and removed them, which is very good. So rest assured that we are taking proactive action. But yeah, I've got control of the stream for now. I think Jack's going to be pretty busy, like I said, with the shill bidding and whatnot. He's kind of keeping an eye on the back end of things to make sure we've got no funny business going on. And if there any issues arise, he'll be on that. And I'm sort of taking over the live stream and discussing what's going on. But yeah, I mean, the platform interface is pretty simple, pretty basic, kind of as I mentioned. You can kind of see on the right of your screen here, you actually have the bidding interface where you can submit a quick bid or a max bid. And it also shows you the number of bids and who the high bidder is. And of course, that's also protection against shill bidding. So you can actually track and see who's winning what coins and making sure that, yeah, you're not going to have the account selling a coin also bidding on that. We did have some people asking about why we would have sort of the accounts that win coins being public in the sense of showing a username. I know Nomos, the auction house, does this, but the majority of auction houses have actually gone away from that trend. It used to be maybe 10, 15 years ago that most auction houses would actually show the username, but we decided to actually have that public just because we wanted to have a very transparent and open platform. Kind of the idea, the worry is that some auction houses, if you can't see who's bidding, you're not really necessarily sure of where those bids come from. So this is just a way to guarantee that it's very open, very public, and very transparent. And I'm curious if anyone in chat has a target they're looking at, any coins they want to bid on. If you're not too worried, send those in the chat. We can take a look at them. I'm sure it's interesting. This one, though, this coin here is a great piece. This was featured on the top 10 list. If we look at the provenance, it actually goes very far back. This is one of the Berlin State coin cabinet duplicates. So you've actually got over a century-old provenance, a very solid one, and of course it's got a wonderful style. So, you know, that relatively high hammer doesn't surprise me, and that's such a nice piece. It's going to be about the best of the kind that you could own. And here's kind of a fun example of a lot to where we see there is actually an NGC graded holder. So if we go to the images, we can see NGC has given this a grade of almost uncirculated, 5 out of 5, 5 out of 5. But then, of course, we do have the L5 community grading platform, and we can actually see that here we have some agreements to where the community average came out to be a 5 out of 5 metal and a 5 out of 5 strike. So we're seeing some overlap there in terms of what the community would grade this coin as, and then also what NGC has that as. But yeah, this is a really wonderful coin. You can see it was struck with fresh dies, and the reverse, especially the Pegasus here, has got a very nice style and a very deep strike. And again, so I kind of mentioned earlier the transparency of the site. You come down here, you can actually see what the winning bid is. So of course not the bid max, but the current bid that the lot is being won at. Whoever places that bid, that is made public, again, just so that you don't have shill bidding or sort of unscrupulous activity. We wanted to make sure that all of that is open and transparent. And here is another wonderful lot. This one also has provenance going back very far, so it's actually X Ars Classica 12, 1922. Also a plate coin, and a wonderful history in terms of people who collect provenance. This is certainly the kind of coin you would want to pick up. Also a rarer, sort of late archaic type, not as common as what you would see later from Corinth, so sort of that combination of late archaic, hard to find, plus the provenance. It wouldn't surprise me if this piece goes for a good bit. Yeah, so we're seeing that sort of bid function coming out again, to where if someone places a bid in the last few seconds, there's automatically a time extension. And that lot is sold. Yeah, this piece also actually did make the top 10 list too. Wonderful provenance you can see here. Going back to 1909, and also from an old Ars Classica sale. So again, for someone in the market for such a type, this would be more or less one of the best examples you could find. It does have maybe a little bit of an off-center flan, and a couple surface issues perhaps, but still, it's got very attractive dies, decently centered, all things considered, and then of course that provenance that does add a lot of value. And so for everyone watching, if you're bidding in auction 1, of course that's today and ending over the course of the next couple hours, but we're also going to have auction 2 coming up, and if everyone looks at that, we already have previews live. Let me see if I can pull that up here, just if anyone's curious. So it's not just auction 1, but kind of the idea is that with auction 1 already live, you can kind of get a preview of what to expect in the next sale. And of course we're going to have some very nice coins here, lots of Greek and Roman gold, different pieces. So consignments to sell are already open for auction 2, and of course we're seeing some very fun and interesting coins already listed. A good variety too. You see some U.S. coins even, medieval also, and of course ancients are going to be the predominant section. But yeah, you can see here, I mean, there's already enough lots consigned to fill up at least 5 pages, so we're getting good results there too, which is very interesting and good to see. Yeah, so it's very interesting. You can see there again, someone bidding in the last second, you get a time extension. But kind of as I was going into earlier, we do have the open bid history. Oops, I'm not signed in, just to make sure I don't accidentally leak my address or whatnot. But anyway, if you scroll to the bottom here, you can see that every bid is shown, the winning bid amount, so whatever the coin is currently at and whoever placed that. So that's really great just for transparency's sake, and to make sure there's no shill bidding going on or things of that nature. Yeah, we should be having some more uploads on the channel soon. One idea was we had some people kind of curious about the process of selling on L5 specifically, in terms of sort of how that works. So we're probably going to have a video coming out in the coming days or weeks, coming days really, for that to showcase the process, how that works. And then also I've got some fun video ideas just in terms of numismatic content, sort of historical content. I'm going to be looking at doing a video series on Anglo-Saxon England, and sort of really interestingly doing a sort of long form discussion and sort of studying the evolution of coinage in Anglo-Saxon England, and sort of seeing the earliest phase, of course, being more of a pagan environment. That then, of course, changes very, very quickly around the 6th century, 7th century, and sort of seeing how the impact of the conversion to Christianity actually affects numismatic iconography and developments. And then, of course, working with the wonderful Venerable Bede in his work. So I think that'll be a very fun and probably a pretty comprehensive series. Best I can tell, I'm looking at maybe 6 to 8 videos, 2 to 3 hours each, in terms of a rough schedule and outlay for that. But it's going to be very interesting and a lot of fun. Sort of, I mean, not an understudied topic, but specifically on YouTube in a video format content, it is rather difficult to find quality content on Anglo-Saxon England, and then specifically in terms of the iconography, what you see there, and how sort of the changing cultures impacts that. So I think that series is going to be a lot of fun. Here's a wonderful lot also, a silver tetradrachm from Sicily, a wonderful style here we can see, and also very well preserved. Although from what I remember, not the most lengthy provenance. But interesting, of course, as we see with the community grading and comments, you can see that people have already factored that in to the pedigree scale to reflect that there's not that much of a provenance here. But in terms of the metal and strike, you can see they have a higher value given by the community. But the idea being then, of course, that anyone can comment and you get a community average. Yeah, there's a comment about the dolphins being beautiful. I certainly agree. It's a very elegant piece. And speaking of aquatic life, here we have a squid, which is always fun, or an octopus. Yeah, but very nice. And a really wonderful piece here, wonderful style, wonderful preservation. So that doesn't really surprise me. The hammer here, the price. A bit of provenance back to 1992, which is great. And yeah, of course, a nice write-up here. We can see the seller put a lot of effort into their coin, which is nice to see. And the hammer reflects that, of course. Yeah, for anyone following at home, you can click on the Follow Auction Live button on your own desktop, and that will let you view all the lots as they come up. Yeah, this one is great. A really wonderfully preserved bronze in wonderful style. And of course, generally those pieces do tend to be a little bit lower value than the silver we just saw, but with such a nice piece, sort of definitely a top quartile issue, and the hammer reflects that. The reverse, especially with the lion, he's got a very bold stance, but also kind of a quintessential Greek style to him. And as it looks, an old tag also. Yeah, on the topic of the dolphins, here's a wonderful coin. Got a clamshell and a dolphin, but of a very charming style. Yeah, but the platform is really great, as I said, very open, so you can see who's bidding to make sure there's no shill bidding going on, and then of course sort of a very succinct and very easy to follow description system too, to where it's very no nonsense, just the material, the weight, the estimate, descriptions that can all be located very easily. Yeah, this piece actually has a very nice patina too, sort of a very earthy dark green, and hints of red. Yeah, it's a fun obverse type here in this coin. Zeusamon, of course you have the connection to Alexander, but they typically have, for Zeusamon, a very bold portrait. I do very much like that with the ram's horn. I think as far as depictions of Zeus go, certainly one of my favorites. Yeah, we can see here too, you also have the terms with the seller, what they accept. So a lot of them are going to take PayPal, obviously credit cards too. And then of course also wire transfers are allowed, very standard for the industry. But here's a wonderful example too of Hercules fighting the lion, a great coin type, and we can see that the strike is very bold. The obverse is a little bit marred by the nose area there, some kind of die flan or die flaw perhaps, but still very nice. And the reverse especially stands out. Very dynamic. And then an old tag as well. Yeah, that is one nice thing about L5. Some collectors do care a lot about that, collecting old tags, having all that. In this case, it's actually labeled very clearly who it was from, but oftentimes that's not the case, and there's a whole hobby within the hobby of people who track down old collector tags and then figure out where they came from, which is very interesting. But on the L5 platform, since you're able to post more than one photo, you can actually photograph the tag as well. Whereas like if you were to bid on a coin on bidder, it would usually just say with an old tag, but you couldn't actually see what that was. But for L5, then you can photograph that, which does allow for better transparency. Yeah, here's another very nice coin. If you look actually in the obverse and reverse, both of those shield details are very clear, which is definitely unusual to see. If you look, let me see if I can get this picture pulled up. Yeah, the original artwork depiction on the shield, what was engraved, sometimes it doesn't actually survive with a weaker strike. It kind of becomes so muddied that you couldn't tell the details are there. But on this example, you can see that that has been preserved. So yeah, this is certainly a very nice coin. very well engraved, and then to see it in that state of preservation, definitely difficult to find. Yeah, so very nice. As you can see, the L5 platform also has two different ways to bid. So you actually have the traditional way of submitting a max bid. So whatever your maximum might be, you would submit, and then the system automatically increases your bid to meet that. But there's also a quick bid option. So if you're kind of in a live bidding war with someone, you could click that and kind of go just one increment above, as opposed to actually manually typing in that number. We can see there's a bit of a bidding war going on right here between those two users. Yeah, and there's another example. As you saw, that lot was about to close, but someone put a bid in at the very last second, and so the system will naturally extend that to give more time for bidding. And that's actually pretty helpful for both sellers and collectors. For a seller, obviously, you can make sure that you get the bids that people are wanting to place, but as a collector, it can be frustrating too if you're going to bid on a lot and you kind of have something sniped away. So this just guarantees, again, sort of the transparency is the main focus. So by doing that, by having time extensions for a last-minute bid, everything remains transparent, easy, and simple, and there's no shenanigans, no issues. Here we go, our first Byzantine coin. Just kidding, a little bit too early for what I work with mainly, but still a very nice piece from Byzantion. Yeah, a bold bull here, a little bit crudely engraved, but still quite nice, with a dolphin underneath. We can see here some sellers actually will upload a YouTube video as well, which is very nice. You can upload a video of a coin you sell to the platform, and then that'll be automated to where it goes up also on the L5 YouTube channel. So if you all want to check that out, so this is also a nice place to go for L5 content. Some of the lots that are being sold in the auction, they'll have a video here, and when you go to the L5 channel, you can see here that a lot of those videos are then uploaded. And typically you're going to see a lot of the better coins being filmed and then uploaded here, like this Gordian III Aureus, extremely nice as you can see, but also the Ptolemy, that's one of my favorite coins in the wholesale. Wonderful provenance, wonderful style, wonderful strike and preservation, but definitely check out the L5 channel too. I mean, for now it's been mostly short form content, videos of coins, but I think we're going to be expanding that also and uploading specifically L5 content, longer videos on there as well. So definitely check that out. Here we can see a wonderful coin with a bold horse here in the obverse. Wonderful style. Well engraved muscles too. Often that's kind of a tricky part, where a horse might look more comical when those muscles are misengraved or they take a more abstract form, but here they're very, very lifelike, which is difficult to find. And a very classic coin here, a very well-known type that's very much loved. You can see here the hammer reflects that, but a decent provenance, not the furthest back, but yeah, there is some previous sale records there. But if you look here, we can see what I was talking about with the YouTube channel, with videos being uploaded. You can actually see the wonderful strike on this piece and sort of get a better appreciation for the coin than just from photographs. So that's a very nice feature of the site. Yeah, so someone has asked, if a bidding war occurs and it doesn't finish before the next coin, what happens? So when one lot has a time extension, every other coin gets pushed back. So the coins themselves don't have a specific start time per se. Once the first lot starts, kind of everything follows that. So if the first lot were to close in 30 seconds, then the second lot comes after 30, but if you had extensions up to a minute, the second lot would start a minute after. So kind of the idea is then everything's going to be sort of interconnected like that. I mean, it's if you've bid on bidder before, it's very similar to a live auction. Sometimes you actually do have a lengthy bidding war where it could take 2-3 minutes on a single coin. That's the exception. You don't see that very often, but it could happen. So the idea then is every following lot is just pushed back by how long the previous one took. But this is a great example also. Wonderful style. It's going to change here before I could talk much about it, but that's a very nice piece too, and the hammer reflected that. And of course, as you saw, the community grades are very nice to have there. That being that anyone who has an L5 account can submit what they think the medal, strike, and pedigree are. We do have guides on sort of how to evaluate that and what the different numbers mean, but there the idea is that you sort of have a community consensus, which hopefully gives a more true picture of a grade than you might find on something like an NGC holder, where that reflects the opinion of one worker. This is supposed to represent sort of the entire community, which is very nice to have. And you can see here that the community has said this coin has an average of 3 out of 5 medal, 3 out of 5 strike, 2 out of 5 pedigree. So for the pedigree, yeah, that checks out. It does have previous sale listings, but nothing crazy. And in terms of the medal and strike, the medal does have a few issues, crystallization maybe, some deposits, but all things considered, a very nice coin. But that's beneficial too, just to have that community grade. It gives you a much better idea of what other people think about a coin, for better or for worse, but again, that's going to be just honest and transparent. And of course, that's something you can do without purchasing a coin, right? Anyone can make an L5 account and give their opinion. You don't actually have to be bidding or purchasing to engage with that. The idea being also is a way to learn. Here we can see the user Hesiod. They submitted their own grade, so that's how that works. You can see what other people think, and then of course, if like an expert you respect or follow, you can also find a specific grade that they leave, and then also just see the total community averages here. But this is a very great piece, the Wapenmünzen series from Archaic Athens. I did a very nice write-up on this piece in the L5 email that was sent out a couple days ago, I believe, or maybe last week. So if you find the top 10 coins in sale 1, you'll see my write-up on that piece. But that's a very nice one and a pretty cheap hammer, honestly, all things considered. That's a difficult type to find, and then also very much in demand. There are a number of theories on the Wapenmünze type. I'll go back really quickly just to check this out. But the idea is that the obverse, or older theories, speculated that it actually depicted the different aristocratic clans in Athens, and that the different symbols were tied to that. Modern scholarship has somewhat disabused that notion, and their purpose now is less clear. But again, if that sounds interesting, I did do a write-up in the email, so you can find out more about that there. Yeah, but this is a later coin, but a very nice example. Full crest, deep strike, wonderful toning, and of course the hammer reflects that. And again, I did mention, make sure you always scroll down on lots, because some sellers are uploading videos, which is very helpful, so you can get a really nice idea of what the coin looks like in hand. Here we can see a very thick flan, deep strike, just a really nice piece overall. And of course, such a classic period, sort of the peak of Athens. Very fun to own a coin from that era. And then here we see a later emission of a less fine style, but still fun nonetheless. I think the sort of more stylized owl almost is more charming to my eye. Sort of like a chibi character almost, but it looks very nice. And again, here we see that we have the community grades once again, so you can kind of see an average of what others thought about the medal and the strike, and also the pedigree. Yeah, so here we've got a really wonderful example of a large, thick flan, but then also more or less a perfectly centered obverse and reverse, especially in terms of Athenian coinage. That's often very, very hard to find to get the entire intact design on both the obverse and the reverse. So this one is a provenance back to Roma. But yeah, very nice. We can see here the community says metal 4 out of 5, strike 4 out of 5. Which is maybe a little bit lower than what I would rate it, honestly. But again, that's a very nice thing about having that community grade average. You can see what everyone on L5 thinks. I would assume the metal marking down is going to be based on the cheek of Athena there, and then the helmet you have some deposits and a few scratches, but at least for those deposits, you could remove those in theory and clean the coin. But yeah, a really nice piece there. The next coin, not so much, but still nice. It's it's got a large test cut. But for a lot of these, it's just the idea that you can own an Athenian tetradrachm very cheap. And there's so much history behind that, a lot of economic influence and power. And then, of course, you have the connections to the great Athenian statesmen of the period, the Peloponnesian War. There's a lot to like there. So even sort of a worse example, there's still a lot to love and a lot to appreciate about it. But yeah, look at the community grade. You can see metal 1 out of 5, strike 2 out of 5. I would concur there. It's not the nicest piece, but still, I think for that price, that's very, very cheap. Here we go, next lot. Yeah, and again, if you notice a community grade, that continues on. You can see here that was given a rating of 4 out of 5 and 3 out of 5, which is pretty fair, all things considered. But that's just a very nice system, something to keep an eye on down the road. As you kind of go through lots and bid, you can see then sort of what others think and how they graded that. Yeah, but a fun idea too, you can also see who's watching a lot, etc. So kind of a little bit of a similar functionality to something like eBay in that sense, to where if you're on bidder, of course, you can't see who else is watching that. But the idea is it's more transparent. Trying to have an open marketplace. Yeah, so here's an example too. I've been talking about the community grades. On some coins, you don't actually have enough grades yet to get a composite average. So in that case, you can see here, you just have the question mark out of 5, as opposed to actually having an average. So we can see here only one person did give a grade, so of course that's not going to be enough to actually have an average. So in those cases, we'll just have this, but then again, if you see the question marks, you can always scroll down and find the individual grades people posted. Yeah, that's true. Someone is saying they enjoy test cuts. It's a cool reminder that they are real pieces of history. That is very true. They do show circulation, economic usage, pros and cons. Kind of like what I said, that if you really want a perfect piece, obviously you don't want a test cut. You want to have the coin as nice as possible. But if you're looking more for a piece that embodies the history of that coin, the more worn it is, the more used it was, the more test cuts it has, the more economic circulation it saw. So there certainly is a whole argument to be made that, kind of in a very real sense, the more worn a coin is, the more history it might have, so to speak, and then the less worn it is, actually the less used it ever was. So it's an interesting angle for sure. Yeah, this is very nice. If we see here, this is a really wonderful style. The man-headed bull, if we zoom in, he's got great facial detail. A little bit worn, but still doesn't mar the design. Still quite nice. And yeah, with Nike flying above, also very nice. If you look at the wing and robe detail, that's an excellent point in the comments. Yeah, this is great too. If we look at the obverse here with the bull facing, it's got a very aggressive temperament and countenance as it looks. But a very nice job engraving by the sellator there. But yeah, a wonderful piece. Yeah, so here we can see the community gave that a 5 out of 5 metal and 5 out of 5 strike. I don't know if I would necessarily agree. I think the strike is certainly a 5 out of 5. Very bold, very well preserved, but there are some metal issues, especially along the ridges here of the flan. But again, that's a nice thing. You know, you don't always have to follow what the community says, but you get a good idea of what others are thinking and the grade they would give. Yeah, you can always go down and see that 21 people were watching that lot, so that was very popular. Got a lot of comments and whatnots. Yeah, if you see here, someone wrote that it's the sharpest strike of this type they could find on either Coin Archives or AC Search. So, get some fun community interaction. Yeah, so here's an example. I mentioned earlier that the community tags are sometimes photographed. Here's a great example of that. To where sometimes on a different auction house you would see someone say it has an old tag, but you had no idea what that is. Here on L5, that tag is photographed. So even though there may not be that much information, you can actually see the tag. And for a more experienced eye, perhaps, you could then tell, is it from an old collection, and figure out from there the value that a tag might have. Of course, sometimes they don't really have any inherent value. It's just fun to collect, but other times you can actually piece back a tag to an old major collection. So it just depends on the coin and the tag. Yeah, this one is a very nice lot too. I had this actually also in the top 10 list. But a bold strike, very nice preservation. Yeah, and overall a really wonderful coin. I saw the Provenance also back to 2003. Not the oldest, not the most extensive, but still, it's always great to see that there's a Provenance there that goes back decently far. But yeah, this is very nice. If you go to the top 10 email blast, top 10 coins in sale 1, auction 1, you can find my write-up on this piece. But certainly one of the highlights, I'd say, of the auction. A huge amount of history behind it, of course, and then also an interesting tie with architectural elements that you're going to see in the write-up. From the famous mausoleum, of course. The ruins are still standing, but I think the majority of the statues and whatnot have actually been taken back to the British Museum and can be seen there today. But yeah, it's really a wonderful type of a very interesting ruler. Yeah, so here's another example of someone who uploaded a video of the coin, so you can get a much better idea of what that looks like in hand. You can see here this is a Provenance also from Loy, a previous auction. Yeah, this is a wonderful piece too. I can get the images to work here. We can see a video of it, but this has an extremely sharp strike. Really wonderful details. Too bad the video is sort of out of orientation there, but yeah, if you look there, you can see that the coin is pretty much as struck. Really, really wonderful details. Very well preserved. And then, of course, that hammer price does reflect that. But 0 bids, I guess no one has bid, but still, I think I would agree with NGC there at Mint State. A very nice coin, but it looks like that one might go unsold. A wonderfully stylized Alexander here, or the Hercules bust, but very, very nice. And also, again, you've got the video. We can see here 18 people watching the lot. But yeah, as I mentioned, the L5 YouTube channel, if you come over here, you can find different videos of lots for sale of some wonderful coins. So that's also a great resource, great place to go to. Yeah, this one is quite exceptional, though. Quite the nice coin. Also from Loy, and then again with a video, that's always nice to see. You can get a much better impression of what the coin looks like in hand. And 21 people watching that lot. Here's a fun example too of an NGC grade compared to the L5 community. We can see NGC gave this a 5 out of 5 and 3 out of 5, and then we have for L5 a 4 out of 5 and 4 out of 5. So you can see slightly different opinions there between the NGC grader and then the L5 community. But this is a very nice coin, wonderful detail, and yeah, just an excellent piece overall. Yeah, this coin is the one that made the top 10 list. Another example of those. So if you find the email blast, you can find that. But this one really, compared to the previous lot, has much better detail. The drapery here, the robes, the wings, all of that is much better preserved and also better engraved. But really an excellent example. And of course, once again, we have a video, which is always very nice. But here we can get a better idea of what that looks like in hand. But very illustrious, very detailed. Has anyone in chat won a coin so far? If so, let me know. We can go review it. I've got a few targets coming up, but they're going to be later in the auction. But here we can see 4 out of 5 and 3 out of 5 for the grade, which is interesting. I guess I would agree for the most part. Although kind of a shame the obverse is slightly off-center, but still it's a very nice coin. Well preserved. Oh, nice. Someone says their first target's up in a few. Well, good luck. Hopefully that goes well. Yeah, so again, you can see at the bottom of every L5 lot, you have the bid history, so it's very clear, very open. You can see who's bidding where, which of course is done for transparency's sake. Behind your username, you're obviously very anonymous, but still, that way you can guarantee no one is shill bidding and there's no suspicious activity going on. Here's another worn tetragram, but of course, again, as we've mentioned, sometimes a worn coin is also very fun. Lots of history, etc. a lot of enjoyment to be had. Much cheaper too than what a very expensive one would look like. But the auction is making decent speed. We're at about 60 lots within an hour, so about 1 minute per lot, averaging that out, which is decent, all things considered. And here again, we've got a video. Those are always fun to watch. Yeah, this one has some nice iridescent toning. And still quite a fair price. All things considered, that's pretty cheap. Yeah, also quite cheap still. Some deals to be had. Yeah, so again, very transparent. You can see here 18 people watching. You can also see who is bidding what. So again, the whole thing is very open, very transparent. And here's quite a great example. A wonderful strike and preservation. Very illustrious. An NGC mint state, 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5. And I guess not enough community reviews yet to get an official grade. But I think I would agree with NGC there. Yeah, really a wonderful coin here. Yeah, so again, you go to the bottom, you can see different bids placed and also then the community grades, and then if there's a comment also, people can leave that there. We see here 15 people are watching the lots, and then yeah, the bidding is underway. Not the world's nicest coin, but again, the price reflects that. You can get a lot of history very cheap. Here's a really wonderful example from Alexander at Tet. But if we look at a very unique style, very wide flan also. We see here Provenance, you have an old Naumann sale. And then of course again you have the bidding history here of different accounts and users, so very transparent, very open. That's of course L5's goal. Want to make sure that everything's sort of by the book and open and honest. Sad, someone says they didn't have their card saved yet and couldn't bid. Yeah, make sure you have everything in order in your accounts, that if you're going to bid, that you can. But there's always next auction. Yeah, if you look auction 2 for L5, we actually already have the previews up here for L5 auction 2. So this will be in about a month or two's time. But again, sort of this will be the auction after this one. You can see some lots that have already been consigned. Some very nice pieces we have from Bactria, a nice tetradrachm, US coins, yeah, different pieces here. A very good variety. Even some very nice Byzantine, which I'm happy to see. That's of course my bread and butter. So yeah, it's going to be a very fun sale also, and I think much larger too than this one. We've got a lot of consignments already, and of course some pieces still sitting extremely cheap. So you can see here, of course, that's not going to go for $6, but that's sitting low right now. And yeah, some just really wonderful coins that are about as nice as they come. Look at that toning here in the strike. I mean, that's a museum grade piece. We can see here Exgorny and Mosh, this piece. And then of course, like most of the bid history, and 27 people watching, so that's certainly a more popular coin in terms of just the watch list. But the more abstract style Alexander issues, posthumous of course I mean, but sort of copying his original design, those are always very popular. Another good budget coin coming through, very cheap. Not in the best condition, but of course that's not the worst thing in the world. Yeah, extremely cheap for a tetradrachm, all things considered. Even in this poor shape, yeah, still, it's a good deal. fun style here. A very expressive Alexander. And 10 people watching. Yeah, again, a very cheap coin. Go throw on some background music too here. Lo-fi music's always nice in the background.
My work is easy because I use ClickUp. Here's how I keep track of all my tabs.
Can you all hear that background music? Let me know if so. Or if that's annoying, I can also turn that off. But here's a wonderful coin also. Got lot 78. If you look at that, the reverse especially, you've got a very accurate Zeus. Great muscles and bodily detail. Very nice. Of course, the hammer reflects that. And here's a case of a fine style coin, but the obverse here you've got a double or even triple strike going on, which kind of does diminish the nicety of the coin by a little bit, but still, even at opening, I think that's a fair price, though it looks like that might go unsold. Here's a wonderful coin. If you look here, you've got very lustrous surfaces. Bit of a crude style, but in a charming way, especially on the reverse. But overall, a very nice issue. No video on that lot, sadly. That would have been a nice one to see in hand. But yeah, a very nice coin, and of course the hammer does reflect that. High interest, and a community rating of 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5, which is fair. I think honestly I might have given the strike a 5 out of 5. But the metal does have a few issues. But yeah, overall, that is a very nice coin. Yeah, but the nice thing is 4L5 again, sort of with the standardized format, you can always come down to the bottom, pick out exactly what you want to see, whether that's the weight, diameter, the ID, so by sort of having that standardized, that does make the whole experience very easy. Whereas other auction houses or a place like eBay, you're going to have just every seller does it their own way. But here, everyone who sells is sort of forced to use that platform, which is great. Just makes the whole thing easier. And similar thing here, we can see the community grade. You've got a 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5. So the community on average thinks the metal's 2 out of 5, the strike's 3. Yeah, I mean, there's some issues going on. I might have even given that a metal 1 out of 5, but overall, it's still a decent coin, and going very cheap for a tetradrachm. Yeah, here is a really wonderful coin. We can see exceptional detail, a fun style, very lively, especially with that portrait, the detail around the nose. He's kind of got a little bit of a snarl almost, but yeah, really wonderful and sort of an exemplar of fine style Greek coinage. And again, you've got somewhat of a provenance, nothing crazy, but ex-Gorny and Mosh. So yeah, it's better than nothing. And the community grade average, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5. I think I would agree on that. Yeah, here's a very fun type. A style pretty far from the normal issues of Alexander, the lifetime issues in his name, but charmingly so. I like the very stylized, the face, the pinched nose and lips and eye, but still very charming, very fun. The reverse very interesting too, of course. Got a pentagram on there and different symbols, and then the provenance from a pretty recent sale here. Coin cabinet's a newer auction house, but very nice. Yeah, we can see here an example of those community comments. The user here has even left, a physical comment besides his grade, which is awesome to see. So the metal grade they gave, the strike also, but then they left a comment explaining why. So people can learn from that and then see. Yeah, this coin is very, very nice. You've got a fine Lysimachus tetradrachm here, a great obverse. If you look at the strike here and the toning, it's really quite wonderful. Great flow lines. Reverse also very nice. And of course the hammer is reflecting that community average of 4 out of 5 metal and 3 out of 5 strike, which is fair, but then no provenance. But here we can see the video. Yeah, and that's just very exceptional. Difficult to find this nice and with that deep of a strike. And yeah, 42 people watching, so that's a very popular coin on the website. Great toning. And for $8.55, that's a very cheap price. Here we see no provenance, 21 watching, and a few grades submitted, plus a lot of bids. so here we see again an old tag, plus some provenance. So we've got a sail back to the 90s, which is nice to see. And then, of course, with L5, you can post more than one photograph, so you've not only got an old tag, you can actually also post the plates of the coin, which is really wonderful, a great way to verify if that coin is indeed plated. It does happen that sometimes someone lists a provenance that's not true, just in general, I mean, so L5, of course, verifies that, and then by the seller posting the provenance, then anyone who wants to see that can verify it for themselves. So that's a great system to ensure honesty and transparency. Here's a coin of wonderful style with nice toning. Some provenance, nothing crazy, but Loy and Papillon. But again, a video, those are always great to see. And yeah, really a fine style and a deep strike. 34 people watching. And yeah, the hammer reflects that. But again, you know, it's nice to have also a worn coin. The previous lot went for about 3,000, which, yeah, that's an expensive coin. But here, a budget example for 145 right now, so that's good to see. A good mix of very nice coins and also some affordable ones too. Yeah, fun coin here. Interesting style. And a fun control mark too. Yeah, here's a fun coin. Got a decent provenance back to 2014, but again, a very nice strike and style for the L5 community. They gave that a 4 out of 5 and a 5 out of 5. So, very nice, and of course the hammer is reflecting that. A few issues, but overall very nice. I suppose those issues in the reverse are probably why that's a 4 out of 5 and not a 5 out of 5. With 33 people watching that lot. Yeah, this one's a fun coin too. I've mentioned the top 10 list a few times. This was also on there. with a fun write-up. But one of the earliest known coins, and a great example at that. High quality, as far as these can be, of fine style, the incuse. But this video really does encapsulate that. You can see just the wonderful strike, the wonderful punch. Yeah, and 23 people watching, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, for fans of ancient coins, this is pretty much from the very beginning, so it's just a very fun type to see. And again, if you want to learn more about it, I've got the write-up in the top 10 list that covers this type and 9 others. Yeah, the videos are quite nice. I think it does make a difference when a seller uploads those. You can very much more enjoy the piece. Yeah, but a very dynamic scene here. Decent incuse as well. And then some provenance back to Loy. We can see the L5 community gave that a 3 out of 5 and 3 out of 5 in terms of metal and strike. Fun bronze right here. Rough surfaces, but still very attractive. I'm setting up my iPad so I can read the comments as they come in. That way I've got a dual screen set up here. But this is also a very nice coin. Fine style. Yeah, so we see there my last second bid came in, and so the clock was then extended to reflect more time. No provenance it looks like, but yeah, a lot of action on this coin. You've got 25 people watching, so certainly popular. is a fun type. I don't see any Provenance, but still very interesting. Jugate busts are always a plus, a pro. People tend to like those. Yeah, surfaces are a little rough here. Not the nicest shape, but still fun iconography. Yeah, and a very interesting history on that coin. Yeah, here's a wonderful coin also. Some flan issues, some what might even be damage there in the obverse on the cheek, but still very nice. I'm not seeing any Provenance, but a popular lot that we've got 30 people watching that. And yeah, at a decent hammer right now. Another fun coin with a wonderful beard. I'm not sure my goatee stacks up to that. Not seeing any Provenance, but still we can see we've got some grades submitted for an average of 4 out of 5 metal and 3 out of 5 strike. 2 out of 5 pedigree. I'm not sure where the pedigrees come from, but maybe someone knows of a Provenance and left a comment about that. I'd have to look later, but NGC's also given it a 5 out of 5 and 4 out of 5, so a little bit higher. So L5's got 4 out of 5, they've got 5 out of 5, so the community has given that a slightly lower grade than what NGC has. Yeah, so here we've got some Provenance, back to Gorny and Mosh. Yeah, some activity so far in terms of comments, and 23 people watching. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously got a few issues, but still, I mean, even in spite of those, it's quite a nice coin. The reverse is more or less unscathed, but the portrait is a little bit marred, especially around the hairline there, but still a very nice coin. Got 5 people watching that lot. Still ship's prow. You've got some nice detail preserved. Maybe not the world's nicest coin, but still a very interesting one. I think that might be the cheapest coin in the auction so far, $25. Yeah, very nice here. So kind of a great example of a very popular type, not in the nicest shape. That is presumably going to go very cheap, but to a collector. We can see here, I bet this is much nicer in hand. You've got a lot of portrait details left. I think that obverse could be cleaned up. A lot of that sort of gray-black color, depending on the formula used, you probably could get rid of some of that. I don't do too much chemical cleaning of silver personally, just in terms of what I collect, late Byzantine. That's hard to find, late or silver, but that could definitely be cleaned up, and a good deal for whoever got that. more Seleucids, very nice. A very earthy coin. Green, brown, and red. A fun palette mixed in here. Yeah, very nice. We've got a wonderful example. A very Seleucid piece here in terms of the style, the nose, the eye. Not personally the biggest fan of the coinage series in general, but they're very interesting. We can see here there's a solid provenance back to 2003 from Freeman and Sear. 23 people watching that lot. So solid activity so far. And very interesting. I will say the reverse design is fun there. Here's a bold and fierce portrait of Hercules. Very nice. Yeah, that is a wonderful coin. A few issues, rough surfaces, maybe some damage there, but still quite nice. And of course we've got a video. We love to see that. And yeah, it does look much nicer in hand. Very nice. I think that coin was a good deal that just went by. Alright. Next up, very nice. I'm not seeing any provenance on the piece, but still. Alright, very nice. This one seems like a pretty good deal. I'd say it's an attractive obverse here. Fine style. Decently worn, but the face is relatively untouched. I'm not seeing any provenance, but still quite the solid piece and a good deal at that price. Fun bronze going cheap. Yeah, that is one nice thing about the L5. There's a good mix of coins. And we had some high-end pieces that were going for, I think the highest might have been 7,000 or 8,000 in terms of a very nice provenance gold coin or silver, but also cheap ones too, so there's coins for everyone in the sale. You know, it's not so exclusive that every coin's going for a large amount, but you've got a good mix of both cheap and expensive. So coins for everyone. Yeah, if anyone watching has won a coin so far, let us know in the comments. Here's a very nice coin. Got some provenance too, and a wonderful video. always enjoyable when they post an in-hand video. You can get a much better feel for the piece. Yeah, this one does appear to have a very nice strike. Also some toning there if you look at the hair. Yeah, very nice coin. 29 people watching that lot, and a decent amount of bids. And it looks like that lot has, oh, it hasn't closed. Received a last minute bid. Yeah, by looking here, you can actually see the whole bidding history of a coin also, which is nice, again, for honesty and transparency. A coin with Provenance to Loy, and an interesting description there. Yeah, in decent shape, and you can see there's some scratches here in the surfaces, but overall well struck, well preserved. Nothing too distracting. This one also has some Provenance to Loy. Very nice. And a video, of course. 24 watching, that's also a popular lot. Yeah, some wonderful toning there. Iridescent, very nice. Yeah, quite the piece here. And the hammer, of course, to reflect that. This is quite an attractive piece. A very nice patina and a wonderful style. Flowing locks of hair in the beard as well. Of course, a massive coin here. 32 millimeters, 23 grams. This is one of the best coins in the entire auction, and my personal favorite. If we zoom in here, we've got a magnificent style, wonderful toning, and of course, for such a wonderful piece, there's got to be a wonderful provenance. This goes back to the cousin of Winston Churchill, back to 1929. So it's really a wonderful piece here in terms of, for someone who wants to own a Ptolemaic coin of this type, this is about as nice as they come. Here we can see the reverse. I'm curious what that will hammer for. Well, that seems quite fair. Also another very nice coin, not quite as nice as the previous lot, but of course The hammer is reflecting that. Yeah, another wonderful coin here. Excellent fine style. Overall solid surfaces. And of course a nice video here too. Again, everything's very open, very transparent. You can see here how many people saved the lot to watch it. Of course, all the information, the history of the bids are shown at the bottom. And of course, at the top, you can see who the high bidder is and at what amount. So that's sort of the purpose of L5, to provide open, honest transparency and a safe and easy ancient coin marketplace. Got a nice piece right here. It looks like that'll be going for cheap. This is wonderful. We've got the elephant skin headdress. That is always a very popular type. In Bactria, they always have very interesting iconography, but this is one of their best types. Yeah, we can see a lot of activity here, various grades and whatnot. And 13 people are watching that lot. And the L5 community gave that a 3 out of 5 metal and a 2 out of 5 strike. So overall, a decently high grade. Switch out our background music here. I guess apparently they have a medieval lo-fi station. Sounds more interesting. Uh-oh, I think this has frozen. There we go. Very nice. Yeah, Bactrian, there's always some interesting coins here. There's a video as well. We love to see that. A well-toned piece, a little worn but still quite attractive. And the owl especially looks quite nice. Nice. We should be entering into the Roman section now. So we've seen a lot of Greek coins so far, and we're switching. Yeah, this is a popular lot. You've got 26 people watching it, so quite a lot of interest. But it is well preserved, well struck. Brandon, thank you for the comments. Yeah, it's been a good sale so far. We've got a lot of very interesting ancients from Greek to Rome, Bactria, various different aspects and categories. And yeah, we've had strong bidding throughout, but a good mix of affordable coins and also some very expensive ones, so coins for everyone. Yeah, but some of these coins so far coming through are quite nice. Really wonderful toning and strikes. And some provenance too, to a naval auction. Yeah, here's a very nice coin. So during the Second Punic War here, the time period. And a solid provenance, back to 1996. And a very attractive green patina here. Very earthy and refreshing. Yeah, this is also a great coin that was in the top 10 list. So much history, kind of a classic mix of two of the triumvirs on one piece, one coin, Mark Antony and Octavian. I mean, really one of the iconic ancient coin types that's out there. That was slabbed once, 4 out of 4, 4 out of 4. Not enough community grades to get an average on that, but still, this is quite a nice piece. As we can see, little wear. The only problem perhaps being that it's struck off center, but still, it's quite a nice coin with provenance back to heritage auctions. And yeah, if you're interested in that coin, I did a write-up for the top 10 list to where you can find it. Same with this one. This is also very great. It's a coin with the obverse that has Mark Antony on there, and the reverse has Julius Caesar. And this actually has a very nice provenance back to 1969, so really solid there. We can see that the community has given that a grade of 3 out of 5 for the metal, 2 out of 5 for the strike, and then for that provenance, a 3 out of 5. But it's really quite a nice coin, and just, so much history packed into one piece there, with some bold iconography. Here we've got one of the classic Mark Antony Legionary denarii, this one being quite worn, but of course that's very common for these. And for the circulation patterns, they actually ended up being sort of a very commonly found species for decades, and even up to about a century and a half after this period. So into the Antonine Age, you can actually find these coins still in hoards. So they were clearly very much appreciated and used. Part of that being perhaps, debasement and whatnot, but a very interesting series, and these certainly saw a very long circulation pattern in the Empire, and that's why a lot of those come so worn. Yeah, here's a great example from Alexandria, but a very fine style. And a lovely patina here, sort of a very dark gunmetal gray with hints of light green and a little bit of red. But it's very attractive, very nice, and some provenance back to a C&G auction. You like to see that, and yeah, going for a decent price. Yeah, here's another classic type, the tribute penny of Tiberius. Very popular, always in demand. It's got some biblical connections that seem to raise the price by a good bit. But very interesting here, we've also got provenance back to a Loy auction. And you can see this was one of the more popular coins. You had 32 people watching. And it's going for a fair price. I mean, it's got a nice strike, decent preservation. Maybe not the best obverse die, but still quite a fun coin. Yeah, here's one with perhaps a worse reverse, but a much more attractive obverse in my opinion. And again, a provenance back to Loy. You can see here 39 people watching that, so also very popular. I think these are kind of an evergreen coin type, especially with that biblical connection. They always stay popular, and collectors love to have them. Yeah, third example of the type here. This one without provenance, but still 33 people watching. and a lot of good bid activity. Yeah, and as I had mentioned earlier, with the collector tags being photographed and that you could add more than one picture to L5, this is a great example of that, to where you can see an actual picture of the collector's tag, and so that can give you more insight into who once owned this. Xpink inventory back to I'm not sure if that's the date on there. I would have to inspect, but yeah, it looks like that has at least a written tag with provenance back to 1959. No plate, but still quite a beautiful coin here. A few surface issues, but of course Caligula, he's very rare and very expensive, so this is a great and wonderful example to own, and yeah, really nice style there. Yeah, we can see some comments here, people using the community features, which is great to see. But not enough grades to actually get an average yet, so not every coin will have that, but for the ones that do, that's also a great tool. But yeah, this is a fun coin here. A nice chocolatey patina with hints of green. So here we can see a provenance from a relatively recent auction. Still, this is always a popular type, quite nice too. Maybe a few surface issues, but still quite decent overall. Yeah, and again with L5, you can always scroll down and see that 22 people were watching this lot, so decently popular, and then of course the entire bid history is also published. So that is always nice to see, very transparent, very open, which of course is the point of L5, in that we have a marketplace run by collectors for collectors, and just making sure that everything is smooth and open. Yeah, here we've got a denarius of a portulent portrait of Nero, a little bit on the chubby side here, with a provenance back to a Loy auction. Decently popular. Of course, Nero is always a top emperor for collectors. People tend to enjoy his coinage just for his notoriety, but this is a very nice piece. We can see here, especially on the reverse, the composition. Sometimes the Roman denarii can have almost caricatures in terms of what's depicted on the reverse. It didn't always receive the most amount of attention, but this actually seems quite pleasant, quite nice. Decently realistic, and especially so for a Roman denarius. Someone in the chat says hi, hello. Thank you very much for joining. Yeah, we've got a fun live stream here just to document the very first sale. Kind of talk through some of the lots and yeah, just generally show off what's in the auction. Yeah, we've pretty much completed the Greeks now, going into Roman. Oh, very nice. Yeah, they say their coin is next. Well, good luck. I'm not sure if you're referring to the aureus or the coin after this, but either way, yeah, the aureus is very nice. We can see here, worn, but charmingly so. But of course, that's pretty common for the aurei of Nero anyway. They can be rather difficult to find. Yeah, very nice. He says it is the aureus. Well, cool, and good luck. Yeah, it's also nice to have the in-hand pictures too. It does provide a nice contrast here. We can see also popular, 35 people watching. Well, I'm not sure if you meant by your coin if you were consigning or buying, but either way, congratulations. It is very exciting. Yeah, next up, more coins of Nero. Very, very nice. This one being a little bit more worn, maybe with some issues, but of course the price reflects that and makes for a nice collector example. Yeah, again, a very good variety. You know, the previous lot is a more expensive Arius. Maybe that not everyone could afford, but then again, we also have some very nice affordable examples too. So it's a very good mix of sort of high-end expensive coins and then lower-end pieces as well. This one also is very interesting, a very fine style here, very attractive. Again, sort of that gunmetal dark gray with little hints of red, especially on the obverse here if you look in front of Nero. But a very nice piece. I'm not seeing a provenance, but still quite attractive. No in-hand video or pictures, that's too bad, but I'm sure this one looks quite pleasant. In hand, I mean. But yeah, quite a fun coin, quite a fun style. We can see here 13 people are watching that lot, so decently popular. Not quite the Sestertius, but the lower, smaller denomination, but still decently nice. Obviously not perfect, a few issues, but I think the price reflects that and still remains quite attractive. Here is another denarius, very nice. Some provenance also to a Loy auction. 35 people watching, and then a lengthy bid history back to June. So definitely a popular coin that people were looking at for a while. Interesting style, kind of a squished face, but still decently nice. We can see here again, a bid just came in the final seconds, so every time you have a last minute bid, the time gets extended by a few seconds. Just so that's clear, if anyone was wondering. Yeah, there it happened again. But a very nice denarius, of a rather unusual style, but interesting for that reason. Also, if the background music is distracting, too quiet, or too loud, just let me know in the chat. I've got some medieval lo-fi put on, seemed kind of appropriate here. Although I'm not exactly sure what would make that medieval. Here we have quite the stern portrait of Galba. Of course, he's always popular. Year of the Four Emperors, sort of a noble stoic figure in the history of the Empire. But his coinage is decently rare and so relatively expensive in comparison with others. We can see here the L5 community gave that an average of 3 out of 5 for the metal and 4 out of 5 for the strike. So yeah, I would more or less concur. I think the metal, yeah, there's a few issues, but still, if you look, the portrait remains quite attractive. Vitellius coin of interesting style, also Year of the Four Emperors. We can see here that's from Coin Cabinets, so a relatively recent auction as well, but a little bit of provenance. And then the L5 community average gave that a 3 out of 5 metal, 5 out of 5 strike, and a 1 out of 5 pedigree, which seems decently fair. It is an attractive coin. And we've got a video here as well, these are always fun to see. Gives you a much better idea of what the coin looks like in hand. Yeah, and that price is jumping up, but appropriately so for such a nice coin. You can see some iridescent toning here behind the bust of Vitellius. Yeah, overall a very solid coin. Lots of history there. Yeah, this is always a popular area. Year of the Four Emperors tends to get pretty high hammers, as you can see here. Now we're in the Flavian, so we have Titus as Caesar. But again, also an attractive coin. You can kind of see a little bit hint of a beard here on the bust. But certainly you can tell that it's Ephesus with a more Eastern style. Not quite what you would expect from Rome, but there's a certain charm with the more Eastern mints. But yeah, it's a very nice coin. Provenance also back to alloy sale. But yeah, overall decent. A little bit of a ragged flan, but mostly without issues. You can see here the L5 community rating is a 4 out of 5 for metal and a 5 out of 5 for strike. Yeah, here we can see another interesting issue, also of Titus, this time as Emperor, but of course it's kind of an iconic reverse, with ties to the theme Festina Lente in Latin, to make haste slowly. You actually see this appropriated by a lot of Renaissance figures also, kind of as a harken back to the golden age of the Roman Empire. If you look at Aldus, the printer in Venice, his book symbol, the mark of his printer shop, who operated at the turn of the 16th century, he actually uses the same symbol, so it's a decently iconic scene here that's pretty well known across the empire and then also throughout the Renaissance. Here we've got sort of the classic Flavian, sort of a squat bust. Not always the most attractive, but there's a certain hardness in the portraits, perhaps, that reflects their background as military men, but a very interesting coin. You can see not enough reviews for a community average, but yeah, still nice, and a very rare issue at that. Here's another quite exceptional Denarius. You can see pleasant toning here in the fields. A little bit of provenance, nothing too crazy, but does have a previous sale there. Not enough community feedback for an average metal striker pedigree, but still a decently attractive example. We can see here 13 people watching that lot. One community grade, but not enough for an average. But here we can see they gave the metal a 3, the strike a 4, and pedigree 0, which seems to me to be about fair. Yeah, again, a little bit of a squat bust, but decently attractive still. Cheap example here, not the best, but also going for a decent amount, not too bad. A budget example. Yeah, here another example, certainly not the nicest, but a lot of history, a lot of circulation behind that piece. Here we can see 10 people watching. Have any coins or hammers surprised anyone? If so, leave a comment in the live chat. I can take a look. We've had some decently high bids on some coins so far, and also some deals. I'd say it's been a good mix overall. Yeah, here's a fun issue. Again, not the nicest coin, but also very cheap. Definitely a fair price for what you have here. Interesting iconography. Surfaces are kind of bad, but overall pretty decent. Yeah, here's a very nice denarius of Domitian. I'm not seeing any Provenance listed, but still very nice. You've got 22 people watching that lot, so it's decently popular. I'd say about an average style bust here. Nothing out of the ordinary, but nothing necessarily poor either. And decently well preserved. Surfaces are mostly good. You can see here there's a little bit of a scratch on the reverse, but for the most part it's quite nice. Quite the decent coin. Yeah, I would say the hammer is very fair, very appropriate for what the coin is. Yeah, here's a coin that's toned very darkly, although if you look, it actually has a very fine style, a very attractive bust. But the toning is a little bit distracting. I'm not seeing any provenance on it, but that's the kind of coin I think where if you bought that, maybe strip off the toning, depending on what you like, but it's a little distracting, a little bit overtoned in my opinion. Decent surfaces, you can see some scuff marks here on the bust, a few scratches that are a little bit distracting, but overall still quite a decent coin. I think that was a very fair hammer, very cheap. Nice. Yeah, here we see more of the Eastern coinage from Ephesus. Very nice. No listed provenance, but still quite a fun piece, not a cheap price. We can see here a more interesting bust. Yeah, some surface issues, but overall still pretty nice. Yeah, I think the subtitle here is very appropriate. The coin cleaner's delight. I think that's very true. This is certainly the kind of coin you could pick up, do a very good job of cleaning, and probably flip. See here any provenance? No, but decently popular. 13 people watching, but a very nice coin. We can see here some rough surfaces, but not terribly so, not necessarily distracting, and certainly a more earthen green patina here. A very nice portrait and die, both on the obverse and reverse. Yeah, decent coin overall. Yeah, we can find the bid history here at the bottom. Yeah, we can see here there's an L5 community average where the overall grade was given of 3.5 for metal, 2.5 for strike, and then obviously with no provenance, 0 out of 5 for that. But still quite a nice coin, decent. I mean, some surface issues. I think honestly maybe I would have given, well, I don't know. I think it's honestly a fair average. Still, yeah, not the world's nicest coin, but decently so, maybe even slightly above average, all things considered. Some of the later Flavian coins can be decently poor. I think this is well above that, so Yeah, quite the fun coin, and I think honestly a fair price here. Here's also a very attractive coin. Let's see, any Provenance. Nice, so we have something from Lance. Provenance. 29 people watching, so a decently popular coin here. I would say certainly a fine style with a bold eagle on the reverse. I think those designs always tend to be popular with the Roman Empire. Of course, the eagle has come to symbolize that, and to have a coin that has both the emperor and that on it, it's always very fun. Yeah, also a coin with some deep toning here. Solid surfaces, a few small scratches it looks like. Nothing terrible, but a little distracting perhaps, but still decent overall. The average L5 community grade is a 4 out of 5 for metal, and a 4 out of 5 for strike. And let's see here, there's some provenance going back to Spink. And also an old ticket that's not photographed, but still overall a decent coin, very attractive, and I think the hammer here, the price is reflecting that. Yeah, the reverse is also decently engraved. Again, for Roman it can be hit or miss, but as we see here, you actually do have very fine facial details on the reverse, which is not a given, so yeah, certainly a nice coin. No provenance, but 29 watching. And not enough data yet for a community grade. But yeah, it's just decent overall. I mean, you do have some surface issues, but the strike seems to be pretty good, I would say. Not the nicest coin here, but again, a rather scarce emperor. Could be a very fair budget example. We can see the style is decently crude. Yeah, obviously not the best data preservation, but I mean overall for $80 for a Nerva, can't necessarily complain about that. Yeah, not enough data for a community average grade. Not every coin has those, but I would say a fair amount do. And hopefully as we get more users, we're going to have more grade averages overall. Let's see here, any provenance? No. 6 people watching that lot in total. Seems like a fair price where it's at right now. Decently fine style. Maybe nothing to write home about, but nothing especially poor either. Preservation, a little bit of maybe not the world's nicest patina or surfaces, but then again, as the price reflects, it's not the nicest coin, but going for a decent amount. So this has provenance from Loy. 22 people watching this lot. Again, a more finer style. You can maybe see echoes of Augustus here in the bust, sort of reminiscent of his earlier coinage. But very interesting, more of a presentation of an elegant statesman here, as opposed to what we saw in the previous slots where you kind of had more of a crass bust. This seems more refined, more stylized. But yeah, overall decent. I mean, the reverse here is a little bit washed out, but overall fine. And with a Provenance here, that's okay. And yeah, a decent coin overall. I'm going to be taking a quick break here as I've been live streaming for about 3 hours now. Just a few minutes to grab a water and use the restroom, but I'm going to leave the auction running up and the music in the background as well. So you can continue to follow and see what coins hamper for. And then I should be back in about 5 minutes or so to continue the stream. Baron says his lot is coming up. He's trying to get an Arius. Alright, I'll put my little break here on hold until we see what the Arius goes for. Yeah, the Marcus is great. That made the top 10 list. Really a wonderful style here. Pretty exceptional. A youthful bust also. I'd have to see the coin again in hand to make really any more detailed comments, but that one definitely stood out. Just sort of a youthful smile on his portrait. I think certainly one of the highlights of the auction. I mean, in terms of his REI, he has different styles and classifications, of course, but I think that if you're going for just one example to have, or even a youthful example, that's certainly one of the better ones out there. Yeah, prices have been strong. Baron just commented that. But that's also a good sign. I mean, I think part of it also is that with the reduced fee structure, people have more to bid on coins, right? I mean, this is beneficial. It means more money going back to sellers and buyers, to where, you know, instead of paying 20% buyer's premium, here you're paying 5% or less. So, of course, that means you have more money to bid. And then likewise, of course, if you're a seller, you're going to keep 100% of what you make, whereas if you went to a different auction house, it could be you only get 85 or 90% of your hammer back. So I think sort of that dual fee structure of being so reduced, you are seeing some higher hammers overall, just because people have more to bid, but overall that's a benefit towards buyers and sellers alike. And of course that keeps more money overall back in the community. So yeah, mixed, but it's good to see. There certainly have been some strong hammers, but also some deals. I think that Roman Imperial overall is doing better than the Greek coinage, but all areas across the board have been doing decently well. I think there were a few deals in Bactria. Those seem to have gone a little bit cheap, but for the rest, yeah, pretty strong hammers overall. Trooper asks about the benefit for the buyer with reduced buyer's premium. You are right in that the lower the buyer's premium that you have, people just kind of calculate their highest bid based on that anyway, but the difference comes in that when you have a coin go cheap, if you have a system with a high buyer's premium, you pay that fee anyway. Let's say you get a bargain, a coin that goes below market value, you still got to pay the 20% on that no matter what. But if you have a system with a low buyer's premium, you're not paying anything on that really. So the difference is that, like, yes, in an environment where you're going to pay your max every time, there theoretically wouldn't be much of a difference, but that's not how bids really work in actuality. You're going to see a lot of fluctuation, and sometimes you're going to have a coin go for market average, but sometimes less. So the difference kind of comes in that over time, for those coins that tend to go less, you're going to be saving money when you're not paying any buyer's premium at all. So it kind of works out in that sense over time, that you do have differences because you're not paying those fees. So like there is going to be a difference over time with that, if that makes sense. Like for an example, to make that a little bit more clear, let's say there's a coin that you want to bid $200 on, and you say, I'm going to bid $200, factoring in the buyer's premium. So if you had, let's say, a 10% buyer's premium, you would then bid 180 with the knowledge that your total cost would come out to 200. But if you won that coin for, let's say, 150 in one system that has a buyer's premium and one system that doesn't, or has reduced, when you win that coin with an auction house that charges 10 or 20% buyer's premium, you pay that no matter what. But if you win that coin at L5, they only charge 5%. So you are right that if your bid went to a max, there's less of a difference. But when you get coins at below that, you do see the savings come into where you're not paying any buyer's premium or a reduced amount compared to other auction houses. So I mean, it's a little bit more nuanced than the savings for sellers. Obviously, if you're not paying any seller's fee, it's pretty direct how you make your money, the difference. But for the buyer's premium, it generally depends that the more you're buying and the more coins you're buying for theoretically at a value under market, then the more you save over time, because you're not paying any buyer's premium or a reduced amount. It depends on L5, it's 0 to 5%, so I'm not sure where you're at on that spectrum, but presuming 5%, you're still saving at 15% from what you're paying. Here's a nice example. Not the best style on the obverse, but the reverse is quite nice and a very fun type. Not seeing any provenance, but yeah, seems like a steal for the hammer that it's at. Here's one with provenance to alloy sale. We've got 32 people who were watching that lot. Yeah, fine style overall. The obverse, interesting for sure, and the reverse too. Howdy, I am back. Yeah, we've got that wonderful Arius coming up. But here's a nice example of Marcus Aurelius Denarius. Looks like maybe someone had typed in the wrong description name here. Nice. Here's a coin from Baron that we discussed earlier. A very nice Arius of Marcus Aurelius. Fine style, youthful bust. With, of course, an old tag here, which is very nice. But yeah, really an excellent coin. I gave this a write-up also in the top 10 list. But yeah, really nice. I'll play the video here. As you can see, really spectacular. About as nice as they come. I'm going to be watching this. I think Baron might have won that. Hey, Baron, congrats. It looks like you did. That's a great piece, and honestly a great price still. I think you might be able to find some hidden provenance based on that tag. So congrats on that. That was a very good pickup. I think honestly probably one of my favorite coins in the auction. Alright, the live stream's been going on for about 3.5 hours. I think I might be closing this down soon, although if people want, I can leave it running in the background so we can have the auction recorded plus the music. Of course, that allows you to watch the auction without any worry about misclicking or misbidding. But as for myself, I'm a wee bit tired from the live stream. Need to grab a coffee and maybe get some fresh air, but it's been very nice so far. I'm very happy with how the sale has gone. We've had a lot of interest, a lot of different bidders so far. And on the top of my head, I think out of the 229 lots so far, 2 went unsold, and both of those were, I think, higher end coins with an estimate that was maybe a little bit above what they were worth. So essentially a 100% sale rate so far, and a number of really cool coins. As we've seen, one's provenance back to people like the cousin of Churchill, coins provenance back to the Berlin State Cabinets, duplicates thereof, the 1920s and 30s. I think some even a little bit earlier. We've had, archaic Greek and high Imperial Roman, Bactrian, a really good variety, so I'm very happy with that so far. And yeah, a really nice auction, I think, up to date, but I'll leave this running in the background. But yeah, it's been good. And thank you everyone who's bid so far and also consigned. As we say with L5, it's a community-based platform. It's been built and designed by collectors for collectors. That's why we have the low fee structure, because essentially it's supposed to be, hopefully down the road, sort of an almost autonomous marketplace that self-regulates and has a lot of people who are engaged in providing expertise and things like that. So we're very thankful for everyone who's helped make Auction 1 happen so far, be a success, and also giving their feedback, whether that be comments or community grades or things of that nature. It's all appreciated. And then also a shout out to Baron. Congrats to him. Won a very nice coin here on the live stream. That's awesome to see. Definitely a highlight of the sale. And thanks for everyone who's left a comment and engaged. And yeah, it's been fun so far. Been a good first sale. Make sure to go to the L5 site and check out Auction 2. That's going to be happening soon. I've already got a lot pulled up here. A really beautiful one, fine style, etc. But if you go to Auction 2, you can see a preview of all the lots. I'm not sure. It looks like we've got about 200 previews so far. But if we go from price highest to lowest, you can generally see some of the nicer coins being listed. But yeah, we've got coins like this. Really wonderful heroic bust from Bactria, and a tetradrachm, a really nice coin. Even some variety now. We've got at least one sort of higher end US coin, which is fun to see. Not all ancients, so that's pretty nice, pretty fun. And yeah, a lot of really cool pieces. More REI, of course, wonderful pieces. Some with excellent provenances too, all starting out very cheap. So make sure to go check out Auction 2 so far. We've got a lot of cool coins to be previewed from a huge variety of different origins, different periods. So yeah, it's going to be a fun one. And thanks everyone for tuning in to the stream for Auction 1. I hope this has been fun for you. It certainly has been fun for me. Alright, well, this is Sam. Until next time, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for future Ancient Coins contents. Thank you.